Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin. On the 26th of September, 1679, a conflagration consumed more than a lifetime's work. The fire, which began with calamitous speed in the dead of night, devoured the rooftops of 3 adjoining houses in the heart of the great Baltic port city of Danzig. To the citizens below, it was a tragedy, the loss of a prominent burgher's property. To the intellectual world of Europe, it was a catastrophe of the first order. For these were the rooftops of Johannes Hevelius, and what burned was his magnificent observatory, Sternenburg, the star castles. Lost to the flames were the colossal instruments of his own design, the products of decades of artisanal genius. Gone were his priceless library of astronomical texts, his own unpublished manuscripts, and the engraved copper plates for his forthcoming star atlas. His entire printing press, a vital organ of his scientific independence, was reduced to ash and twisted metal. At the age of 68, the man who had spent 40 years charting the heavens found his universe of paper, brass and wood utterly destroyed. To comprehend the magnitude of this loss, and indeed the full stature of Hevelius himself, one must understand the unique position he occupied. He was an extraordinary fusion of civic magnate and scientific pioneer, a figure whose wealth and political influence were inextricably linked to his celestial ambitions. Born in 1611 to a wealthy family of brewers in what is today Gdańsk, Poland, Hevelius was a patrician of his city. He inherited and expanded a prosperous brewing enterprise, a business that afforded him a degree of financial autonomy unknown to most of his scientific contemporaries. He was a respected councilman, a diplomat entrusted with missions on behalf of his city, a man deeply embedded in the commercial and political fabric of one of Europe's most vibrant trading hubs. His life was a testament to the idea that the pursuit of pure knowledge could flourish within the world of commerce and public duty. The profits from Danzig's famous Jopen beer, a dark, thick and potent brew, directly funded the mapping of the moon and the precise cataloguing of the fixed stars. This personal sovereignty allowed Hevelius to confront the central scientific imperative of his era on his own terms. The 17th century was an age of profound celestial re-evaluation. The Copernican system had displaced the Earth from the center of the universe, and Johannes Kepler, in the early decades of the century, had supplied the mathematical architecture for this new cosmos. Kepler's 3 laws of planetary motion described a universe of elegant elliptical orbits, a system governed by harmonious mathematical relationships. Yet these laws, beautiful as they were, presented an immense empirical challenge. They were a sublime theory in need of exhaustive verification. To test their predictions, to refine their parameters, and to extend their logic to the entire celestial sphere required a new generation of observational data, a body of measurements with a precision and scope far exceeding what had come before. The work of the great Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe, the half-century earlier, had provided the gold standard. His island observatory of Uraniborg was a marvel of systematic observation. The Tychonic star catalogue was the foundation upon which Kepler himself had built his theories of planetary motion. By the mid-17th century, however, science was demanding more. The telescope had arrived, opening new visual worlds, yet its application to astrometry, the precise measurement of stellar and planetary positions, was fraught with difficulty. Early lenses suffered from significant optical distortions, like chromatic and spherical aberration, which introduced frustrating uncertainties into measurements. The scientific community faced a deep and abiding need for a new, definitive catalogue of the heavens, one that could serve as the bedrock for the next century of physical astronomy and celestial mechanics. Hevelius's response to this grand challenge was the creation of Sternenburg. While figures like Giovanni Cassini would soon preside over the Royal Observatory in Paris, and John Flamsteed would direct the Royal Observatory at Greenwich, both funded by powerful monarchies, Hevelius constructed a rival institution through his own private means. His observatory was a remarkable feat of engineering and vision, an integrated scientific facility built atop his own residence. It was a declaration of purpose, a physical manifestation of his dedication. The open-air observing platform, sprawling across the connected roofs, housed an arsenal of enormous instruments that became legendary throughout Europe. Here, against the backdrop of the city's skyline and the masts of ships in the harbour, Hevelius and his wife and collaborator Elisabetha conducted their nightly vigils. This was a complete research institute in miniature. Below the main platform were workshops where Hevelius, a skilled craftsman, designed and supervised the construction of his own astronomical tools. There was the Peerless Library, a collection of works by astronomers ancient and modern, and the printing house which gave him full control over the publication and dissemination of his findings. This vertical integration of research, instrument making and publication made Sternenburg a uniquely agile and powerful center of scientific production. Hevelius could conceive of an observational program, build the necessary apparatus, execute the measurements, and then typeset and print the results for distribution to his correspondents across the continent, all within his own domestic compound. He was, in essence, his own patron, his own instrument maker, and his own publisher. This autonomy gave his work a singular character and authority. The fire of 1679 was therefore an assault on this entire scientific ecosystem. The destruction of his instruments was the loss of his eyes and hands, the burning of his manuscripts, the erasure of his memory and his future. Yet, the story of Hevelius is ultimately one of astonishing resilience. In the face of this devastation, he immediately began to rebuild. His response reveals the depth of his commitment, a passion that transcended the mere accumulation of data. For Hevelius, astronomy was a philosophical pursuit, a way of imposing order upon the cosmos through meticulous, painstaking labor. His entire methodology was rooted in a particular belief about the nature of observation itself, a conviction that would soon bring him into a spirited and consequential debate with other leading figures of the scientific revolution. The very design of his grand instruments, the tools that made him famous long before the fire, embodied this philosophy, a preference for the power of the augmented human eye and mechanical precision. It is in the nature of these magnificent devices that we find the core of his contribution and the seeds of a profound scientific disagreement. The intellectual foundations of Hevelius's astronomy and the source of his future renown were physically manifest in the remarkable collection of instruments he designed, built, and housed atop the roofs of his Danzig residences. His observatory, the famed Sternenburg, was a wonder of the age, a testament to a very particular philosophy of cosmic measurement. To understand the machinery of Hevelius is to understand his mind. The central dilemma for a 17th-century astronomer concerned with precision was the fallibility of the new telescopic lens. While Galileo's spyglass had opened the heavens, revealing wonders previously unimagined, its application to the rigorous science of astrometry, the charting of stellar positions, was deeply problematic. The simple lenses of the era suffered from severe chromatic and spherical aberrations. A star viewed through them appeared as a fuzzy, shimmering disk of colors, its true center ambiguous. This optical distortion rendered the telescope an instrument of discovery, yet a profoundly unreliable tool for measurement. Confronted with this technological impasse, astronomers pursued divergent paths. One route, taken by figures like Christian Huygens, lay in the complex and challenging world of theoretical optics. a quest to grind the perfect, distortion-free lens. Hevelius, however, chose a different course, one rooted in the grand tradition of his intellectual predecessor, Tycho Brahe. He directed his formidable energy and resources toward the perfection of mechanical accuracy, scaling up the pre-telescopic instrument to a magnitude the world had never seen. His solution was a heroic amplification of the human eye's power through sheer physical scale. The crown jewels of his observatory were his great sextant and quadrant, monumental devices of wood and brass. The great sextant, with a radius of nearly 6 feet, was a marvel of engineering. Its vast limb, meticulously inscribed with fine gradations, was a testament to the skill of Danzig's craftsmen. Operating this device was a collaborative ballet of precision. 2 observers were required, one positioned at the instrument's pivot, sighting the first star through a pinwheel, a small pinhole sight. The other moving along the curved limb, aligning a second sight with another celestial body. The immense radius was the key to its accuracy. A small angular separation in the sky translated into a large measurable physical distance along the brass arc, allowing for readings of extraordinary fineness down to mere arc-seconds. This was astronomy as a physical discipline demanding steady hands, sharp eyes, and a deep intuitive connection between the observer and the machine. His great azimuthal quadrant was an even more imposing structure, a massive quarter circle of brass mounted on a heavy, stable frame that could be rotated to measure both altitude and azimuth. It was equipped with an intricate system of screws and vernier scales, allowing for minute adjustments and readings of unparalleled precision for their time. Hevelius's approach was a declaration of faith in the trained human observer. He believed the practiced eye, when aided by these vast, exquisitely constructed mechanical guides, could achieve a level of accuracy that the distorted light of a primitive telescope sight could only corrupt. His work elevated the Tychonic tradition from a princely pursuit on a Danish island to a new standard of civic, almost industrial, scientific practice in the heart of a bustling port city. This commitment to open-sighted measurement, however, coexisted with a deep appreciation for the revelatory power of the lens. For qualitative observation, for exploring the textures of the cosmos, Hevelius was an avid and brilliant user of telescopes. Here, too, he confronted the limitations of his era's technology with a solution of audacious scale. The only known method for reducing the chromatic aberration of a simple lens was to increase its focal length dramatically. This led Hevelius to construct his famous aerial telescopes, some of the most peculiar and unwieldy instruments in the history of science. These were telescopes without tubes. An objective lens would be mounted on a swiveling bracket at the top of a tall mast, while the eyepiece was held by an observer on the ground, sometimes up to 150 feet away. The 2 components were aligned using a complex system of connecting troughs, ropes, and pulleys. The entire apparatus was a delicate, trembling structure, susceptible to the slightest breeze and requiring immense patience and skill to aim at a celestial target. One can imagine the scene on a clear Danzig night, Hevelius and his assistants maneuvering these colossal skeletal instruments, celestial fishing rods probing the depths of space. They were clumsy, impractical, and yet they worked. Through these bizarre contraptions, Hevelius obtained some of the most detailed views of the moon and planets available in his time. His observatory, therefore, was a sophisticated ecosystem of specialized tools. The gigantic sextants and quadrants were his rulers and protractors, instruments of positional certainty built on a philosophy of mechanical perfection. The aerial telescopes were his magnifying glasses, tools of discovery that accepted optical imperfection as the price of admission to new worlds. This dual methodology reveals a deeply pragmatic and resourceful mind. Hevelius was a master of using the right tool for the job, leveraging the strengths of one technology to compensate for the weaknesses of another. His entire enterprise, funded from his personal fortune as a successful brewer, was a singular vision made real through wood, brass, and an unwavering belief in the power of meticulous, sustained observation. With this unique arsenal of instruments, combining the precision of the past with the exploratory power of the present, Hevelius turned his gaze toward our closest celestial companion. The first great fruit of this labor would be a project of unprecedented scope and artistry, the complete cartography of the lunar surface. The intellectual landscape of lunar studies in the early 1640s was one of tantalizing promise and profound incompletion. Galileo's telescope had shattered the ancient conception of a perfect crystalline sphere, revealing a rugged, textured world strikingly similar to our own. His sketches, revolutionary for their time, were nonetheless impressionistic dispatches from a new frontier. They were the equivalent of a mariner's first charcoal drawings of a newly discovered coastline, evocative, groundbreaking, yet lacking the systematic precision of a true map. The challenge lay in transforming these initial glimpses into a comprehensive and durable science of the moon, a discipline we now call selenography. This was the monumental task Johannes Hevelius set for himself, an endeavor that would consume 4 years of his life and result in one of the 17th century's great scientific masterpieces. The culmination of this effort, published in 1647, was the Selenographia, Sive Lunae Descriptio, the selenography, or a description of the moon. This was a work of extraordinary ambition and personal dedication. In an age where the division of labor was becoming more common, Hevelius embodied a singular fusion of talents. He was the observer at the telescope, the artist at the drafting table, and the craftsman at the engraving press. He personally etched the 40 intricate copper plates that formed the visual heart of his atlas. This complete vertical integration of the scientific process, from photon to printed page, lent the Selenographia a unique coherence and authority. It was a single, unified vision, executed with a level of personal craft that imbued the final product with an almost tangible sense of intellectual ownership. The book itself was a landmark in publishing, a folio of stunning quality that immediately announced itself as a definitive statement on its subject. The engravings achieved a standard of detail and verisimilitude previously unknown in astronomical illustration. Hevelius understood a fundamental principle of lunar observation: a single view is insufficient. To comprehend the true topography of a crater or a mountain range, one must observe it over time, as the changing angle of sunlight across the lunar dawn and dusk, the terminator, reveals its three-dimensional form. He would patiently sketch the same feature night after night, capturing the long, sharp shadows of a new lunar morning and the soft, flattened light of a lunar noon. These multiple perspectives were then synthesized into his final engravings, which conveyed a powerful sense of depth and relief. His depictions of the vast lunar plains, which he called Marias or seas, and the sprawling crater chains possess a dramatic chiaroscuro, a play of light and shadow that is both aesthetically powerful and scientifically informative. His work established a new benchmark, demonstrating that scientific illustration could be a tool of precise communication, conveying complex spatial information with a clarity that words alone could ever achieve. His deep engagement with the moon's appearance led him to a discovery of profound physical significance. Through thousands of hours of meticulous observation and measurement, Hevelius detected a subtle, periodic oscillation in the moon's presentation to Earth. He realized that the features near the lunar limb were sometimes visible and sometimes hidden, as if the moon were engaged in a slow, gentle rocking and nodding. This phenomenon, which he was the first to systematically describe and analyze, is lunar libration. He correctly identified its two primary components: libration in longitude, a perceived east-west wobble caused by the Moon's elliptical orbit, and libration in latitude, a north-south nodding resulting from the tilt of the Moon's axis relative to its orbital plane. His analysis in the selenography elevated the project from a cartographic exercise into a work of physical astronomy. He was investigating the dynamics of the Moon's motion, using its surface features as reference points to decode its complex celestial mechanics. It was a brilliant piece of deductive reasoning, turning a subtle observational anomaly into a fundamental insight about the Earth-Moon system. A cartographer of a new world faces the fundamental problem of naming its features. Hevelius's solution was deeply revealing of his worldview. He chose to map the geography of the familiar Earth onto the alien surface of the Moon. He christened vast mountain ranges the Alps, the Apennines, and the Carpathians. Craters and regions were named for terrestrial places like Sicily, Mount Sinai, and the Black Sea. This act of nomenclature was an act of intellectual colonization, making the Moon comprehensible by framing it in terrestrial terms. It reflected a powerful belief in the unity of worlds, the idea that the Moon was another Earth, a place that could be understood through analogy with our own planet. This approach would later find a competitor in the system, developed by the Italian astronomers Giovanni Riccioli and Francesco Grimaldi, who proposed naming lunar craters after prominent astronomers, scientists, and philosophers. Their method created a celestial pantheon, a permanent monument to intellectual history written across the lunar face. While Riccioli's system eventually gained wider acceptance for craters, a testament to the scientific community's instinct for self-commemoration, Hevelius's legacy endures. To this day, we speak of the lunar Apennines and the Alpine Valley, names that echo his original vision of the Moon as a sister world. The publication of the Selenography instantly cemented Hevelius's reputation as one of Europe's foremost astronomers. It was the foundational text of selenography for over a century, a resource consulted and admired by astronomers from London to Bologna. It demonstrated what a single, determined and well-funded individual could accomplish. Hevelius had taken the raw material of telescopic observation and forged it into a coherent, beautiful, and scientifically rigorous discipline. This monumental survey of Earth's nearest neighbor, however, was in many ways a preparation, a honing of skills for an even more colossal undertaking. Having mapped the Moon in its entirety, he would turn his instruments, his peerless eye, and his unyielding patience toward the far greater challenge of charting the fixed stars themselves, a project that would define the remainder of his life and spark one of the great scientific debates of his era. The meticulous cartography of the Moon served as a grand prelude to a far more expansive ambition, the systematic recharting of the entire visible cosmos. Having rendered Earth's satellite with unprecedented detail, Hevelius directed his gaze and his formidable instruments toward the distant fixed stars. This was a project of a different order of magnitude, demanding a lifetime of unwavering dedication. The astronomical world of the mid-17th century was operating with a foundational data set that, while revolutionary in its day, was showing its age. Tycho Brahe's magnificent star catalogue, the gold standard for nearly a century, was a product of the pre-telescopic era. The developing science of celestial mechanics, animated by Kepler's laws, and the burgeoning questions that would lead to Newton, required stellar positions of ever-increasing accuracy. These fixed points were the essential backdrop against which the subtle motions of planets, moons, and comets could be measured and understood. To advance the new physics, astronomy needed a new map, and Hevelius resolved to be its author. This monumental undertaking, which would consume more than 2 decades, aimed to produce a catalogue of stellar positions that would supersede all predecessors in both scope and precision. Working alongside him, in a partnership of intellectual and domestic life, was his second wife, Elisabetha Koopman Hevelius. She became an indispensable collaborator in the grueling nightly work of observation and the painstaking daytime work of calculation. Together, they embarked on the immense task of remeasuring the positions of over 1,500 stars from the rooftop observatory in Danzig. This effort, however, placed Hevelius at the center of one of the most significant methodological controversies of the age. The dispute concerned the very soul of observational practice. From London, the brilliant and often cantankerous Robert Hooke, curator of experiments for the Royal Society, championed a new technique for angular measurement. Hooke argued forcefully for the implementation of telescopic sights, fine crosshairs or micrometers, placed at the focal plane of a telescope attached to the sighting arm of a quadrant or sextant. The logic was powerful. The telescope's magnification would expand the angular scale, theoretically allowing for much finer divisions of a degree to be read. Furthermore, sighting through a telescope with a fixed reticle would eliminate the parallax error inherent in aligning a distant star with two separate open sights by eye. For Hooke and his colleagues in the burgeoning Royal Society, this was the clear path forward, an evolution in instrumentation that promised a new epoch of precision. Hevelius, from his perch in Danzig, held a profoundly different view. His dissent was rooted in his identity as a master instrument maker. He possessed an intimate, tactile understanding of his brass and wood creations. He argued that inserting a complex lens system into the direct line of measurement introduced a host of new, unpredictable, and potentially fatal sources of error. He worried about the chromatic and spherical aberrations of primitive lenses, the difficulty of ensuring the optical axis was perfectly aligned, and the mechanical instability of the delicate spider silk crosshairs, which could sag or shift with changes in temperature and humidity. For Hevelius, the pinnacle of accuracy lay in the mechanical perfection of his instruments, the precision of their engraved scales, and the proven acuity of the trained human eye. He trusted the tangible reality of his open pinhole sights, believing their direct unmediated view of the heavens offered a more fundamental and reliable truth. This was a deep philosophical schism, the master craftsman's faith in perfected mechanics versus the experimental philosopher's belief in the power of a new optical principle. The debate played out for years in letters and publications, a transatlantic duel between two of Europe's most respected observers. To resolve the impasse, the Royal Society orchestrated a remarkable piece of scientific diplomacy. In 1679, they dispatched the young, exceptionally talented astronomer Edmund Halley to Danzig. Halley's mission was to conduct a direct side-by-side comparison of the two methods. He arrived carrying state-of-the-art instruments, equipped with the very telescopic sights Hooke advocated. For several weeks, Halley and Hevelius observed the same stars, night after night, from the same rooftop observatory, one with the new technology, the other with the old. The outcome was astonishing, and a testament to Hevelius's almost superhuman skill. Halley's final report to the Royal Society was a masterpiece of diplomacy. He confirmed that Hevelius's measurements, taken with his supposedly obsolete open sights, were accurate to within a single arc-minute. This level of precision was comparable to what Halley himself could achieve with his own modern telescopic instruments. The old master's peerless eye, his intimate knowledge of his equipment, and the sheer quality of his craftsmanship were so extraordinary that they compensated for the theoretical limitations of his method. Halley's verdict was a stunning vindication of Hevelius's life's work. It certified the immense value of the data Hevelius had so painstakingly collected, even as history would ultimately prove Hooke's advocacy for telescopic sights to be correct for the future of astronomy. Hevelius would see the project through, but the publication of his magnum opus fell to his collaborator and widow, Elisabetha. Following his death in 1687, she marshaled his vast collection of manuscripts, completing the complex calculations and editing the work for the press. In 1690, she published The Fruit of Their Shared Labor, a magnificent three-part volume. The centerpiece was the Prodromus Astronomia, or forerunner of astronomy, which contained the Great Star Catalogue. It listed the positions and magnitudes of 1564 stars, a significant expansion on Tycho's work, all calculated for the standard epoch of 1700. It immediately became the essential reference for astronomers across Europe, a foundational dataset for the work of Newton, Halley, and their successors. Accompanying the catalogue was the Firmamentum Sobisianum, a glorious celestial atlas. This volume was a work of profound beauty, with engravings of the constellations depicted as mythological figures, rendered with exquisite artistic detail. These were functional art. The allegorical figures were overlaid with the precisely plotted stars from the catalogue, creating a tool that was both scientifically useful and aesthetically breathtaking. Within its pages, Hevelius left his own permanent mark upon the heavens. He used his deep familiarity with the sky to delineate and name several new constellations, filling in the unmapped regions of the celestial sphere. Many of these survive to this day: Scutum, the shield, named in honor of his patron King John III Sobieski of Poland; Sextans, the sextant, immortalizing one of his own beloved instruments; and smaller constellations like Lecetta the lizard and Leo Minor the little lion. The completion of this grand celestial survey represented the absolute zenith of an entire paradigm of astronomical observation. Hevelius's catalogue was the last and the greatest to be compiled by the unaided human eye, a bridge built of brass and dedication, connecting the Tychonic tradition with the great national observatories that would define the 18th century. The famous debate with Hooke, far from being a simple argument over gadgets, reveals a critical transition in the history of science itself, a poignant confrontation between the master artisan perfecting a mature craft and the experimentalist pioneering a disruptive and world-altering innovation. While this monumental work on the fixed stars secured his place in the astronomical pantheon, it ran parallel to an equally deep investigation into the most mysterious and ephemeral travelers through the solar system, the comets. His meticulous charting of the firmament, a monumental effort to fix the heavens for posterity, was paralleled by an equally profound fascination with its most transient and unpredictable visitors. The celestial sphere for Hevelius was a domain of both eternal order and dramatic, fleeting events. His attention turned with particular intensity to the enigmatic nature of comets, those spectral apparitions that had for millennia been interpreted as divine omens or atmospheric disturbances. The prevailing scientific challenge was to incorporate these wanderers into a rational physical system. Johannes Kepler had proposed they moved in straight lines, a conception that struggled to match observation. Others were beginning to explore the possibility of curved paths. Into this intellectual ferment, Hevelius brought his characteristic blend of exhaustive observation and bold theorizing. His studies of the brilliant comets of 1664 and 1665 became the empirical bedrock for his magnum opus on the subject, the Cartographer, published in 1668. This exhaustive tomb was a comprehensive history of cometary sightings from antiquity, a detailed observational record, and a theoretical treatise, all in one. Hevelius argued compellingly that comets were celestial bodies, their paths governed by the sun. He proposed that they moved along parabolic curves. This was a conceptual leap of immense importance. A parabola is a conic section, a mathematically precise shape that describes an object moving under a central inverse square law with escape velocity. While Hevelius was working with a more qualitative idea of solar force, His geometrical intuition led him to a solution that was almost perfect. His model provided a far better fit for observed positions than a straight line, and elegantly explained why comets appeared once and then vanished forever into the cosmic depths. His work on parabolic trajectories was a critical waypoint, a crucial piece of the puzzle that would soon be assembled in its entirety by Isaac Newton, whose own theory of universal gravitation demonstrated that comets must follow one of the conic sections, an ellipse, a parabola, or a hyperbola. Hevelius's cometary data, like his star charts, became foundational evidence for the next generation of celestial mechanics. The year 1679 marked both a professional culmination and a personal cataclysm. Hevelius had recently published the first lavishly illustrated volume of his Machina Coelestis, detailing his observatory and instruments. He was at the apex of his fame, a revered patriarch of European astronomy. Then, on the 26th of September, disaster struck. A fire, thought to be accidental or the work of a disgruntled servant, swept through his complex of rooftop observatories. The blaze was merciless. It consumed everything. The magnificent brass sextants and quadrants, the products of a lifetime of design and craftsmanship, melted in the inferno. His printing press, his vast library, and nearly all his unpublished manuscripts and observational logs were reduced to ash. The completed manuscript for the second part of the Machina Coelestis, containing his decades of planetary and stellar observations, was gone. The loss was absolute, a devastation that would have broken a lesser spirit. In the preface to his 1685 work, Annus Climactericus, Hevelius recounted the tragedy with palpable grief, describing how all his machines and all my books were in the space of a few hours turned to ashes. Yet the response to his calamity reveals the extraordinary esteem in which he was held. Letters of condolence and offers of support poured in from across Europe. His old intellectual rival, John Flamsteed, wrote with genuine sympathy from the Royal Observatory at Greenwich. King John III Sobieski of Poland, a long-time patron, provided funds to begin the arduous process of rebuilding. Fueled by a remarkable resilience, the aging astronomer, then 68 years old, refused to surrender. He immediately began reconstructing his instruments and re-observing the heavens, determined to salvage what he could of his life's work. This act of scholarly courage in the face of ruin cemented his legendary status within the Republic of Letters. To assess the legacy of Johannes Hevelius is to contemplate a figure who stands astride two epochs, embodying the magnificent sunset of one tradition and heralding the dawn of another. He was the last of the great astronomers to conduct a major observational program without telescopic sights, perfecting the Tychonic method to its absolute zenith. His famous dispute with Hooke was a confrontation between two worldviews, the master craftsman perfecting an ancient art versus the experimental philosopher championing a disruptive technology. His ultimate vindication came posthumously, when the accuracy of his star catalogue, the Prodromus Astronomia, proved its immense value to the very astronomers who had superseded his methods. His positions became a standard reference, used by figures like Edmund Halley to track the slow, subtle proper motion of the stars. Hevelius represents a unique model of the scientific life, one that was already becoming a relic in his own time. He was an independent gentleman scholar, a wealthy brewer and civic leader who funded his own research, designed his own instruments, engraved his own plates, and operated his own printing press. He was a self-contained universe of scientific production. This archetype was giving way to the great state-funded national observatories of Paris and Greenwich, institutions that would professionalize the science and make it an arm of the state. Hevelius was the last and perhaps the greatest of the heroic private observers. His contributions form a complete astronomical corpus. His lunar map, the selenography, gave the moon its geography. His star atlas, the firmamentum subicianum, gave the celestial sphere its modern form. His cometary theory and the cometography helped transform comets from portents into physical objects, obeying mathematical laws. Each of these monumental works provided a vital foundation of data and concepts upon which the new physics of the late 17th century could build. Hevelius stands as the great bridge, a figure whose meticulous dedication to the methods of the past provided the indispensable raw material for the future. He was the final, brilliant flowering of the age of brass and eyesight, leaving behind a legacy etched in the stars themselves, a testament to what one human being, with unwavering dedication and a clear view of the heavens, could achieve.
We really appreciate you tuning in to this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.